Webster Tarpley is with us into the fourth hour today. So 2+ hours, phone calls coming up later in the next hour with Webster Tarpley. I want to go over Iran. I want to go over Pakistan. I want to continue to move east into the Korean Peninsula. Why suddenly all this is starting and happening. I want to get into then what's happening with the economy and a lot more with the unauthorized biographer of George Herbert Walker Bush and Barack H. Obama. And we carry both his books on Barack H. Obama at Infowars.com on the secure online video bookstore shopping cart, I would add. Also, he is a award-winning economist and researcher, Webster Tarpley. Webster, so much of what you said in the first Obama deception, now in the new film where we interviewed you a few months ago, is now coming true. So I want to get into how you knew their attack plan. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Brzezinski's been quite public and vocal about it, but still, to see them actually doing it is just amazing. What you think their next moves will be? Are things going well for the globalist, for the Anglo-American New World Order crime syndicate? Is their global game of grand chessboard playing out the way they would have wanted to? How do we block them? And then what's happening with the economy? But first, I just want to share the good news with people. Folks out there have done an incredible job of the Obama deception. It is on track right now to rival any film ever released as being the most viral film in internet history. It is incalculable with the intelligence I have and the systems we have to even gauge it. Conservatively, again, over 15 million views a month and a half ago when I last counted up just a few sites. Just incalculable, the DVDs being copied and given out worldwide. Incalculable because it's so accurate and showed all his lies and said what his next lies would be. And it's actually worse than we said. So the film, people are seeing it almost like revelation. And though it's not real revelation, they reveal what they would do before in their white papers, as you know. So can you speak to people having faith in themselves, realizing we're at the global crossroads where they're trying to bring in the carbon tax tyranny, the total federalization of all water supply tyranny, the fascistic healthcare takeover tyranny, just on every front, militarily, you name it. We're at that flashpoint in history, and it seems things are only accelerating. Webster Tarpley.
Thank you, Alex, and congratulations to you on the tremendous success of this Obama deception. I think we've just gone through a watershed in that I believe Obama has now peaked, at least for the moment, in terms of his ability to manipulate the United States population with his demagogy. You can see that his poll numbers are beginning to fall, and in this he repeats the track of Carter. Now, in the middle of that, I think the Obama deception has been an important ingredient in catalyzing people to see what was going on in front of their noses. And one of my favorite proverbs, I guess you could call it, is something I learned from a Spanish coal miner from the north of Spain, from the Asturias. And he said, you have to remember that in this life you can either be active or you can be radioactive. In other words, you have to use political action to try to fend off and avoid the worst. And I believe that remains absolutely valid today. And the other side of it, I think, is another good quote for people if you're concerned with being political and continuing a struggle even when it doesn't look so good, is you can have the pessimism of your intelligence. In other words, you can look around and say that the world is in very, very bad shape, and it often does, and it often looks like things are not very hopeful, shall we say. So the pessimism of the intelligence is fine, but then don't use that to drop out or relapse into just a mode of complaining. The optimism of the will, and I think optimism of the will is what you showed by putting out this Obama deception. Right at the time we taped that, it was the height of Obama mania. Right, it was the beginning of December of last year, as I recall, the part that I was in.
Yeah, he had 80% approval ratings, godlike level.
Right. It seemed like, a small group of people going against the biggest demagogical exercise in world history, right? It seemed like an act of the most grotesque lunacy. But in reality, I think it has had a significant effect, and I think it will have more. I think the audience for this can only grow because the audience, as long as they were on this hysterical high of Obama mania and utopian dreams and messianic illusions everywhere, people are probably not so interested. But I think as the problems become more obvious, and as these illusions vanish, it vanishes like at dawn, and then comes the hangover. In the middle of the hangover, I think people are going to want to see exactly what has been done to them. So
no, you're right.
I think
That's key. In fact,
grow.
that's the only point I meant to make, and you're right. No, you're right. It's growing. It's accelerating in its exponential explosion. That's what's really taken my breath away. Go ahead, Webster.
So I recommend political action, and I think people. I got an email the other day from a guy in New York City, in Brooklyn, who is a big Obama supporter, and he'd been in the 9/11 Truth Movement, and he wrote me an email saying that he had been very wrong about Obama, and I thought this was probably one of the most committed Obama supporters in New York City. And he said, well, that I realize now that this was a mistake. And of course, you can understand why some people would make a mistake, right? A lot of people hated Hillary Clinton for various reasons, hated other people. Certainly, just about everybody decent hated Bush. So there were reasons why people made this mistake, and that was really what Obama built on, right? He was sort of judoing a situation where the other alternatives all seemed to be totally discredited, and he was new, and nobody knew anything about him, so why not give it a try? Well, unfortunately, not a good idea, as we're seeing now. So I think the resistance is likely to grow, and I think a lot of people are having these moments of epiphany, right, where they realize that this was that they'd been duped, right? So fine, fool me once, shame on you.
Absolutely. I want to get back into where you see Obama's future, how you see his crumbling unfolding. We talked during the break. You have the same concern as mine. He will implode until he's discredited as a fraud, a charlatan, a con man, false hope, a scam artist, puppet, unless they stage terror attacks or some type of Iranian crisis or North Korean situation. So let's start now on the geopolitical spectrum, moving first to Iran.
Right. I think we can start with Iran because Iran is the big concern of the Carter administration, right? Remember that the Trilateral Commission is the common denominator of Carter and now of Obama, and indeed some of the people are the same. Paul Adolph Volcker was put into the Federal Reserve by Carter, and now we've got Paul Adolph Volcker sitting in the White House as the director of economic recovery for Obama. A real amazing thing. And of course, back in the Carter administration, we had Zbigniew Brzezinski running the government in terms of foreign policy from his post at the National Security Council. Today, we have Robert Gates, the protege of Brzezinski, a man who owes much of his career to Brzezinski, now in the Pentagon, running the U.S. military. So Iran was the big thing. The only time Carter got an improvement in his public opinion after the first year was the Iranian hostage crisis, beginning in January in November of 1979, and then lasting for more than a year. Right, that gave him the rally round effect. So we got to remember what Biden said in Seattle on the 19th of October, right, that there's going to be a crisis in the first 6 months. We'll see what that might be. But let's look for the moment at Iran. We just had Obama go to Cairo and give this speech, right? It was really the second time Obama had done this. He had gone to Turkey some months before in April and given really the same kind of speech with a little bit less oomph, and with probably not as much hysteria around it. But there he was in Cairo, and he made this speech. Now, forget about the details of the speech. I think the main thing in the speech that was important was he had no economic perspective to offer. He had nothing about a Marshall Plan for the Middle East, nothing about rebuilding the war-torn economies of Gaza, of southern Lebanon, of Iraq, helping a place like Iran that has been hit by economic sanctions. He had nothing about the Israeli economy, right? 3/4 of every Israeli, of the Israeli children grow up in poverty, thanks to the economic policies instituted by our dear friend Netanyahu when he was the finance minister. If any part of the world needs a Marshall Plan, this is a very good example. There's not a word about improving living standards, fighting disease, illiteracy, despair, hunger, none of that. It's all in the area of just rearranging the counters on the board. Now, after that, you had this election in Lebanon where the Hezbollah were thought to be about to take over the Lebanese government, and they didn't. So it's Hezbollah and General Aoun, a Maronite Christian, a great Lebanese patriot, the guy that I would look to in Lebanese politics. They didn't quite get the majority, but they remain quite strong, and this was considered to be already a magical effect of Obama's speech. The main goal of Obama's speech, though, is to try to turn the Arabs and the Iranians, the Islamic world in the Middle East, against Russia and against China, because this is the essence of Obama's policy. It's an anti-Russian, anti-Chinese policy that tries to address the question of world domination using other countries as pawns, kamikaze puppets, expendable assets, proxies,